Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Las Vegas Raiders Insider Podcast. I am your host, Hondo Carpenter. Additionally, I am your Sports Illustrated Las Vegas Raiders beat writer. And this guy right here, he is my assistant beat writer with the Raiders, tremendous journalist, such a great writer, prolific writer, and a better friend. My guy, Zeke Trezevan. How are you, Ezekiel?
My guy, Hondo, listen, man, doing very well. How about yourself?
Good. I'm excited. A lot of people don't need to know what's going on behind the scenes, but congratulations. You keep getting promotions with Sports Illustrated and you've earned every one of them. You're doing so good. You're killing it. You're assistant beat writer covering the Raiders. You write other NFL stories. You do some college football and basketball. You are all over the place and you're earning all of it. I'm very proud of you, Zeke.
Hey, man, thank you more than anything for the opportunity. I can't say it enough. That's all I've ever really wanted was an opportunity to do this and to get better at it. And I'm grateful for it. Thank you again. My family appreciates it. I appreciate it. And let's do what we do.
Let's do what we do. And to your credit, it wasn't me giving you anything. You earned it.
Yes,
And
sir.
you're good at what you do. You're a great listener. You earned this opportunity. I'm proud of you to be my employee. I'm even more proud that you're my friend.
I appreciate that.
All right. I want to get into some recent articles that you've written. I want to talk about it, but you talked about the Raiders in the draft and how they've set themselves up. Talk about that. Explain that. I thought that was a brilliant article you wrote.
Yeah. So we've kind of touched on that a little bit before, but it seems, the more I watch what Tom Telesco's kind of doing, it's like you're trying to figure out what is it that the Raiders are going to do, and it's almost like Tom is purposely making it hard to figure that out. So the beauty of it is that because they have the different holes on the team that they have to fill, cornerback, obviously offensive line, there's so many different things that Tom can do. And with the different smoke screens that I do feel like they're throwing out there, I feel like even if they stay at 13, they have the ability to draft a player that they could use, even if it's not necessarily a quarterback. So it might be an offensive lineman, it might be a cornerback, it might be, whatever it may be. They're still in a position to win, even if it's not a position that's as sexy as quarterback. So I think Tom has done a good job of being, kind of evasive in terms of, giving out those clues. But I think even down to letting Fluker go when their offensive line has very few, quality players on it at the moment. I think even that was something that is going to help them on draft day, because now you really don't know what the Raiders are going to do. So they have a lot of different options.
All right. Now, you also had another article that I thought was just as brilliantly good when you talked about, hey, everybody, relax. The Raiders have more than just quarterback needs. Break that down. I thought that was really good, Zeke.
Yeah, like they have a lot of different. So basically, they might, in my opinion, I think they may be okay at quarterback right now in terms of having Aiden, having Gartner, in terms of this specific season coming up. Maybe not 3 years down the road, but for this season coming up, they might be okay at quarterback. And while the whole offseason it's been Raiders and quarterback, Raiders and quarterback, there's a couple other positions that they need as well, that they can add to the team that would help out a lot.
Wait a minute. We have not been all Raiders quarterback, Raiders quarterback. We've certainly talked about it, but let's
Yes,
pat
we have.
ourselves a little. Let me pat you on the back a little bit. That has not been us, has it?
Correct. And that, again, like we've touched on it, we've alluded to it before in the offseason, but just on kind of like a national, it's like every day you wake up and it's like they're connected to another quarterback on some level. So, yeah, there's a lot of other positions that they could use that may not be as risky as drafting a quarterback, that can still help the team in the long run.
Back in the building tomorrow. How excited are you tomorrow to be back
Oh,
interviewing
I can't
players
wait.
and just
I can't wait to get back in there, and just be around the guys, being in the environment that I feel good in and I feel natural in, and kind of turn the page towards next season. So I'm excited, man, very excited.
all right, Zeke, we did I think it was on Thursday, a podcast with one of our new writers, Michael France, in which we looked at, and I had been given this suggestion by an NFL executive who saw our podcast and said, who's a friend of mine. He said, listen, I think you should dig in and go over all 32 teams the last 10 years. He goes, that tells the story. The numbers don't lie. Now, I'm told there's a podcast that says that. I've not seen it. So I'm not trying to steal anyone's thunder that has a podcast, but That's a great name for a podcast, by the way, because the fact is that's an NFL term that you know the tape don't lie, or as my good friend the great Chuck Grenier says, the eye in the sky don't lie.
Never
So
lies.
when you look at the bottom 11 teams, and when I say bottom, they're the 11 best drafting teams
Yes.
that have the least amount of first top 10 picks. I want to run this by you, and I want you to tell me what comes off. And we don't plan our show in advance, do we?
At all. No.
Because I like it to be like two guys sitting on a bar stool eating some broccoli bites and burgers and drinking some A&W or some Vernors, okay? There are 6 teams that have had one top 10 pick the last 10 years. Philly, Seattle, New England, the Rams, Baltimore, Houston. All consistent. There are 5 teams that have had 0 top 10 picks. Minnesota, New Orleans, Kansas City, Pittsburgh, Green Bay. They all have one thing in common. They're all consistent. They all draft well. And what do those franchises all have in common? They're constantly in it because they don't take risks. Now, some people, Zeke, first of all, what do you think when you hear those numbers? Look, in fact, let me give you the top, okay? There have been 2 teams that in the last 10 years have had 8 top 10 picks. Jets, Jets, and the G-Men, both from Gotham. And to quote Rob Schneider from The Waterboy, you still suck. Okay. Jacksonville, 7. Chicago, 6. Atlanta, San Francisco, Detroit, Arizona, Carolina, Cleveland, all 5. San Francisco and Detroit now are becoming consistent winners, but they went out and got stability and leadership. What do you think of those numbers when you hear it?
I think just like you had the title, the big eye in the sky doesn't lie. It would be one thing if, all the teams that didn't draft in the top 10 over the last few years were, if the numbers didn't say what they said on both ends, it probably wouldn't mean as much. But for those teams that draft in the top always to be on the bottom in terms of finishing record and vice versa, I think that speaks for itself, especially in the NFL, right? In over a 10-year span, you can't fake those numbers. I think it's just like you said, you have to connect on those picks that you get, or else you're going to always be in the top 10 drafting. So you're right. You have to be precise in your draft day assessments, and you have to make sure you execute properly, or else you're going to be one of those teams always drafting in the top 10. And that's not a good look.
So I'm eating lunch at the combine with a general manager, and we're talking, and he named a particular team that had picked high on several guys. He said, and the problem is they didn't have the salary cap space to pay those guys what they were worth, and you ended up losing them. He goes, the problem is that even if you be drafting high, because those players cost a lot of money to re-sign, and you in today's NFL, especially with the way quarterbacks are paid, you're only have so much money. I think sometimes fans, and this is a good thing. The word fan comes from fanatic. Without them, we don't have jobs. But I think sometimes fans think emotionally, oh, I want this guy. Right? Let's think about this. We got to get rid of Derek Carr. We need Zach Wilson. We got to get rid of Derek Carr. We need Trey Lance. We don't want CJ Stroud. He failed an IQ test. Bryce Young. Now, that wasn't a fan, but that was an NFL head coach. But anyways, sometimes people think the next thing is always the best thing. I have a buddy that was going on the verge of a divorce. And I looked at him and said, the grass isn't always greener. Divorce hurts children. It's painful. Come on. You can make your marriage work. I believe in you. Let's go. I even helped offered to pay for him to get some marriage counseling for him and his wife. Because sometimes moving on, I'm not saying this is not a pro Derek, anti Derek comment. It's just if they'd moved on from Derek for those guys, would everybody who said we need them quit being a fan? I mean, you got to trust the process and you can't take risks, can you? I mean, you've got to be able to say, if we've got this guy valued as a 30 through 40 pick, you don't pick him at 10. Go ahead.
No, completely agree with you. You know, in the draft, you have to make sure that you execute, right. And in terms of the grass being greener on the other side, I do think those, like you said, sometimes fans, they think it's a little bit easier to move on, or that we should move on a little bit quicker than a team should, just because it sounds good or looks good on paper, and that's not always the case. And a lot of times, especially in the NFL, that one mistake of moving on a little bit too soon can cost you a long time down the road. So you definitely have to make sure that you're measuring twice, cutting once, for sure.
Think about this one. Peyton Manning, after his first year, people were calling him a bust. Reggie Wayne. Okay, those guys are both in the Hall of Fame. Look at the people that threw Jim Plunkett and Rich Gannon away. There is a multiplicity. Look at Kurt Warner. There's a multiplicity of people that have been thrown away that fans listen, I understand when these guys are picked, even low-level picks, they're paid generational wealth. And so a fan's perspective is, man, I've been working in the casino for 40 years. I'm making 125,000 a year. This guy gets picked. He's making 400 grand a year. I'm great at what I do. He should be great. But sometimes they forget these guys are 21, 22, 23-year-old kids. And it's just like when I got a Great Dane puppy. They got to grow into that body. They got to grow into that responsibility. And I think sometimes people need to remember the draft is a marathon, not a sprint.
Yeah, no, listen, 1,000%. And I also think that, kind of to piggyback off that, I think sometimes people forget just how great the difference is between college and the pros, and the fact that there's going to be an adjustment period, and that adjustment period is different for every player. It's not going to be, oh, he played 6 games and now he's a Pro Bowler, or oh, he played a year. Some guys need a season or 2 or 3. First of all, the game there's a big difference between college and football in general, and the NFL is always evolving, it's always growing. So that gap can sometimes get even bigger. So I think a lot of people forget the transition that these players have to go through. Like you said, these guys are coming into the NFL, the National Football League, at 19, 20, 21 years old, and they're playing against grown men who have done nothing for the last X amount of years but lift weights while these guys were in school, right? So you kind of have to keep everything in perspective in terms of the draft.
So I have a buddy who, after his rookie year, him and I are on a fishing trip. And I said, so what was your biggest adjustment? And I'm thinking he's going to say speed of the game and everything else. He said, in college, we would all get together and play PlayStation. These guys all have families and kids, and they're grown men. He goes, I almost felt like I should call them sir. And it is just an adjustment, isn't it?
For sure. And it's an adjustment on every level, right? Mentally, physically, emotionally, right? I mean, think about, the Michael Mayers of the world, who was the big guy on campus, and then you come in and day one, Max Crosby is steamrolling you, right? Like, think about the mental transition that takes on a player, right? Like, it's a transition on so many different levels. And we get to watch it live time, right? We're watching these guys grow, and while they're growing, right? So it's a little bit different on our end than it is their end, but it's always fun to watch, for sure.
So, Zeke, next week when you're on the show, you're going to give us your complete 7-round Raiders mock draft. We're going to get your opinion.
Okay.
What should the Raiders do at every spot?
Okay.
You got to be ready, brother.
Oh yeah, I am.
Raider Nation wants to hear from the great Zeke Trezevant. What you doing?
Yeah. I'll listen. I'll have something cooked up for you for sure. And like I said, the beauty of it is that we kind of have to figure out what the people in front of the Raiders are doing draft wise. But I'm gonna have something cooked up for you for sure, because it's gonna be exciting to see what they do.
I'm excited about it. Always excited. Great articles, great writing this week. Congratulations on all your promotions. Stay with me real quick. I want to talk to you, Zeke. You are listening to the Las Vegas Raiders Insider Podcast. I'm your host, Hondo Carpenter, your Sports Illustrated beat writer covering the Las Vegas Raiders. You can find me, of course, at Las Vegas Raiders Insider Podcast on YouTube, at si.com/NFL/Raiders. It's where you'll find Zeke's articles. And of course on Spotify and Apple. Zeke, tell them about your social media. Where do they find you on X?
Yeah, on X, you can just type in my first two initials of my name, EZ, and then my last name, Trezevan. So T as in Tom, REZ as in zebra, and then my name should pop up from there.
Awesome. Check them out. Tell Jazz I said hi, Zeke. We'll see you again later. Bye, everybody. See you tomorrow.
Yes,